and welcome everyone. We're excited to share our invited guests that are such distinguished individuals that are helping us with a big project here. My name is Karen Green. I serve as treasurer for the California Association of Youth Courts, and I've been involved with the youth court program since 1990. So I'm very excited about finally getting to an evaluation after all these years. Let's find out though who all is joined here with us. If you can we see everybody there, Sasha? I'm wondering how many of you are from the North Bay area. If you are, raise your hand.
North of the Bay Area. North of the Bay Area.
North of the Bay Area, right. Can you?
I'm in Oregon right now.
But okay, you are way north today, Barry.
I am in Oregon. Yes.
And then how many of you are from the area south of the San Francisco Bay Area?
Yeah, raise your hand.
Yes, if you will, raise your hand.
Raise a hand there. Great.
And then if you are a youth court coordinator, will you indicate that by raising your hand? And if you're a partner agency with a youth court, are you is a youth court program under your umbrella? Give us a hand on that. And then if we could get a raise of hands for those of you involved in probation or law enforcement, just to get a picture here. Hey, Ed Quay.
Retired.
Yeah. And how many of you are involved in the education component? Your youth court is under a school district. And how about anybody from outside the state of California that's joined us today? And have I missed anybody? If there are other categories that you'd like to chime in, go ahead and unmute yourself and tell us who you are. That gives us a good picture of what kind of a group we've got, and thank you all again. I want to give you, before I introduce our distinguished panel, I want to give you a little bit of a background on evaluation within the youth court movement. Again, youth courts became of interest to the Department of Justice and one of their branches, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, commonly known as OJJDP, back in the mid-90s. Youth courts were sort of an idea that was springing up across the country, and the DOJ and OJJDP felt that it was a good movement. They were interested in supporting it, and as a result contracted with the American Probation and Parole division out of Lexington, Kentucky, and specifically a woman by the name of Tracy Godwin. And they gave Tracy the go-ahead to develop some kind of communication networking system to try and get all of us that were doing youth courts to talk with one another. Together, we provided, under Tracy's direction, some training materials. We conducted trainings throughout the country and developed some guidelines for youth courts. And one of the things that always was emphasized at the end of trainings or as part of those trainings was develop some kind of data collection. Now, we were never quite told what exactly we should be collecting. There was no directive, there was no form to follow. And frankly, we were never quite sure how that data would eventually be used, but we were all pretty compliant, collecting data of one kind or another over the years. Out of that interest from OJJDP and working with the growing movement, and more youth courts were developed, eventually resulting in OJJDP saying, you guys have gotten so big, we think you're able to stand alone, and we're going to support you creating a National Association of Youth Courts as an
Sure.
independent organization, nonprofit. So out of that movement and the development of a national association came the opportunity to now form a California Association of Youth Courts. And we were given a $5,000 stipend from the national organization to start a state association here in California. And again, courts were growing like crazy, and we were starting to do trainings from one end of the state to the other. And as a result of those trainings, again, we were told, be sure you're collecting data, be sure you're documenting what's happening in your organizations, but never given specific direction as to what we should be collecting or what would be done with that information once we collected it. I did have at one point a college intern who developed a nice little format that sort of looked like what we would call an Excel form today, where it acted as a guide to information that you might want to collect on cases that you were taking in and doing hearings on. And I think maybe Jennifer Coulter still has a piece of that and uses a part of that original format. At any rate, what we learned as we went along and grew within the California Association of Youth Courts and started to attempt to apply for some grants, a new term came into our vocabulary called evidence-based practice or evidence-based program. And we weren't sure exactly what that meant, but we were pretty sure that we were doing it. And so what did we actually did we actually need to provide in order for us to get that certification or stamp of approval that grants were now requiring us to provide? We knew we were good. We knew because people told us, our students told us, you've changed my life. We could demonstrate that we had a lower recidivism rate than what students were going through the regular juvenile court process were showing. But wait a minute, was that lower recidivism rate because we were doing low-level cases in comparison to the regular juvenile court? Was it a result of the programs that we had developed? Or was it just a situation where kids were maturing and staying out of the kinds of trouble that had gotten them involved in our youth courts at a younger age? But we thought we knew. After all, we were demonstrating that kids were staying in school, they were getting better grades, those kids that were in our programs. Through some of our resources, we were able to provide drug education, and we felt like we knew that drug use was being reduced. And we certainly like to think that the different models that we were developing were able to serve communities and local jurisdictions in a way that met their needs and the kinds of cases that they were being asked to hear. We also felt that we knew that we were creating civic-minded youth and that we were, in fact, educating good future jurors for the court system. And we also felt that we knew and were alert to the changes that were taking place in the juvenile justice system. Well, enter Dr. Leone and Dr. Dillard, who through some unusual circumstances, those of you that believe in things happen for a reason, this was really one of those situations. Matt Leone and I met through at a celebration of life service in Reno for a mutual friend, as it turned out. And Dr. Dillard came into the picture as a result of Judge Irvin being at a youth court conference in Las Vegas, and Rebecca wandered in and said, hey, I'm interested in doing evaluation. Is anybody interested? And fortunate for the California Association of Youth Courts, we have created hopefully a marriage that is going to address both qualitative and quantitative information. So at this point, I'd like to introduce our two presenters and experts, both of whom have got credentials that would take me an hour apiece if I really went through all of their wonderful work and their resumes. But suffice to say, Matt Leone did his graduate studies here in California at the UC Irvine. He is currently the associate professor, but director of the graduate programs at the University of Nevada in Reno. As I looked at everything, Matt, it looked like that's about your third time to be in that position in charge of graduate studies. He has done numerous studies and on topics such as the theory of race and crime, bounty hunters, jail overcrowding, sentencing of youth that have committed DUI offenses, and has even focused on looking into the stress of correctional officers and how it affects their work and their family relations. He's been an instructor at the National Judicial College, and is most recently this year the recipient of the Distinguished Teacher Award at that's the Donald Tibbetts Distinguished Teachers Award. More importantly, as a fellow educator, I found it very interesting to see how Matt's students felt about him. So when I Google rate my professor, I see a man who gets fives, the top acknowledgement from his students. And the student comments are things such as, he's the best professor at UNR. His tests are hard, but he can talk for 3 hours and give you more information than you could imagine. So go to class. And probably one of the most significant comments was from a student who wrote, he's always available and really makes every effort to help you do well. So following is then Rebecca Dillard, who is an assistant professor at the School of Social Justice at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas. And Rebecca's graduate study work was done at the Ohio State University. And those of us that love that beloved institution know it is not Ohio State, it is the Ohio State University. So please correct anybody that you ever hear of it, refer to it as otherwise. Rebecca's done a lot of research around juvenile delinquency and childhood issues, particularly around maltreatment. She's focused a lot on sexual violence prevention, and again, has done lots of writing and collaboration on such topics as childhood maltreatment, resiliency that follows that, and ways that kids are able to either succumb or get through those difficult days. She's worked on adverse childhood experiences over the first 10 years of life. She's worked on promoting youth competency through balanced and restorative justice, a topic that's all familiar and pertinent to our work. And then promoting youth competencies through balanced and restorative justice. Again, I'm always amazed at such a young person doing such significant work. And also Rebecca has received the outstanding, or rather distinguished, research award from Ohio State, the Ohio State University. So that's an introduction of our presenters today, and I think we can rely on the fact that they have a vast amount of knowledge to share with us, and we want to make sure that your questions are answered as we go along. So do place any questions that you have into the chat box, and periodically Sasha will let us know, and we'll make a stop and answer those. So Sasha, if we could have that first slide up, that would be great. So we thought that the topic, based on what I've just shared with you, the topic of what we know, what we think we know, and what we like to think we know, seemed to be really appropriate as we take a look and begin to evaluate and understand program evaluation. So go ahead, Sasha, if that will finish that slide. And now Matthew and Rebecca, the stage is yours. We'll periodically, when you tell us you're ready to sort of talk to a point or move on to the next point, we'll go ahead and let you be the guide to explaining to us a little bit about what program evaluation is all about, why we do it, why it's critical to being able to move forward in the work that California Association of Youth Courts is hoping to do. So Matt, you want to start out?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I had to keep looking back and see exactly who it was you're talking about. Ryan, I believe you had your hand up. So is there something you want to jump in and ask before we get moving, Ryan? I'll take that as a no. Anyway, so what we're trying to do here, just to cut to the chase scene. As Karen mentioned, everything these days is all about proving what you're doing is working and that it's important. Evidence is critical, and more important than evidence, what is critical for programs like youth courts is funding. And so to go to the end, and then so we can circle back around, you can't get money from agencies, the feds or anyone else, if you can't show that your program is working, or that your program is working but would work better if you had more funds for more services or more materials or whatever. And so consequently, what you're going to need to get that is data. And the data will be in a sense in two forms. The quantitative data, the stuff that you can measure, the stuff you can analyze, and the qualitative data, the stuff that you get from people by talking to them. One of the reports that I was sent had some good stuff at the end of it about anecdotal information coming from different folks who've gone through the system, the kids thanking the coaches, the kids thanking the judges and whatnot, and that's great. But in order to convince people to loosen their purse strings and to give you money, it has to be a little more systematic and it has to be a little more scientific, because we all know that the squeaky wheels are the ones that get the grease. And the best example I can think of that is the Rate My Professor that Karen mentioned earlier. There are two types of students that respond to those things, the ones that hate you and the ones that love you. And in no way is that random, in no way is that representative. It's just whoever decides to take the time to get online and type their comments about whoever it is that they're talking about. So I like those things because I look at them and go, wow, people like me. But of course, only the ones that like me are the ones that are going to waste the time to do that, or the ones that truly hate you. So this needs to be more scientific than that. It needs to be more across the board. It needs to include everyone, not just the ones that are really, really happy or really, really upset with the programs. So what we're talking about getting this group started on is some sort of systematic data collection method where you're all collecting the same sort of stuff. You might have other stuff that you want to add on to it. So your data string might have 45 variables, but at least everyone's collecting the same first 10 variables or 20 or 30 or whatever. And if we can do that, and we can get information on who's coming in, what they're doing, what they're going through, if they successfully completed whatever programs they had, and how long they've been out, and if they've been staying out of trouble and things like that. If we can get all that stuff together, then it's going to make it much easier to convince the state as well as the feds that the programs are worthwhile, valuable, and deserve funding. So this is the first step in what's likely going to be a several-step process, all aimed at doing a couple of things. One, showing that these programs are working. Two, showing that where these programs are weak, you're fixing them, so they're going to work better. And three, showing these programs would work even better if you gave them some sort of funding. If we can get all that going, then these programs, which have sort of labored in obscurity for quite some time, might become a little bit more recognized, become a little bit more part of the landscape of the justice system, and might even encourage some places that don't have them to get them. So that's kind of where I'm coming from as far as this is concerned. Rebecca, why don't you jump in and tell us what you're thinking about this?
Yeah. So as Matt said, one of the big things for communicating to funders is they believe in numbers and data. And I've worked as a service provider for youth in the court system before. So I know that you can be on the ground working with these kids and see positive outcomes on individual levels. But as a service provider, it also makes it much more difficult to get that big picture view of what is your agency doing as a whole, or what is the state of California and all of the youth courts doing as a whole. So the main way that we can work around that is to get some collective survey or measurement for every single kid that comes into one of these programs, so that we can compare across all of the kids and say, I can look at the kids that are on my caseload and see that they're having positive outcomes. But does that hold true for the majority of the kids who go through our programs? And so while data is absolutely the way to do that, the thing that we're hoping to do is first get one of these measures created and out to all of the different court systems so that everyone is collecting some of the same information for these longer term evaluations. We want to look at the data that's already being collected and how that can support getting funding for your programs and start providing some evidence of the good work that you guys are all doing. And then eventually we'd like to incorporate voices of the youth and get their perspectives. What did they love about these programs? What did they hate about the programs? Which elements were most important to them and which pieces felt like a waste of time? All of those can help to support what the statistics or what the numbers are finding, and can tell a story of the work that's being done and the difference it's making in kids' lives. And it feels like it can be a really big undertaking. Service providers, directors, you guys are overwhelmed and overloaded with so much work. And so that's where people like me and Matt come in to help out and do some of this evaluation work to help get you the resources to do the best services and the best provision for these kids that you can.
And to tag on to that, data collection is in some ways a reflection of the personalities of the individuals who are serving as the framers of the data collection process. And this is where our flawed personalities create work for all of you, because we become extraordinarily obsessive and compulsive, and we want everything, basically. We want you to collect every information piece that you can. And it creates a burden for the people who are collecting the data. I might have some sort of theory about eye color and how well persons with different eye colors will survive in certain training programs. That's great. But can I feel comfortable burdening the people in the 58 counties of California to collect that data? And the answer is, I can, but I won't, because my comfort level is pretty low. But nonetheless, it's unfair for me to make work for you. So really what we're trying to do here is come up with not just the data that is critical for collection, but to be cautious about the process, so we're not wasting your time collecting data that will either never be used or will in all likelihood not yield much in the way of importance in terms of showing who these programs are working for. So walking that fine line is really a challenge, because you can literally collect hundreds and hundreds of variables per kid. But the most critical ones are the ones that we want to focus on. We can add more on later if you want, or your individual court can add more onto the data string if you'd like. So in moving forward, the 3 counties that sent me their data strings, and I sort of added them all together, what we don't have is a whole lot of what would be called in statistics concordance. You're doing some of the same things at the very front end of the data stream, and then it goes in very, very different directions after that. So we're going to try to, unfortunately, I was hoping to come in with some better ideas, but so far only 3 counties have replied, and I really don't want to start setting policy based on 3 counties. So when I start getting a little bit more in the way of data, and I can look at these data and see where they overlap and then add the best from each county into the data stream, I think at that point we might have something that we can start passing around for comments.
Let me just jump in there for a second, Matt.
Go ahead, Karen.
And just invite, if we had, I think, 10 different youth courts that indicated they would be willing to submit data, and that's great. And those, please go ahead and follow through so that Matt and Rebecca can move forward. But if you aren't one of those 10 and would like to participate, we really encourage you, regardless if you're a court operated court or youth court, or you're under a school district, or you're part of a boys and girls club, all of that information is going to be helpful. So know that you're all invited to participate in this, and frankly, the more the merrier. And you will get both Rebecca and Matt's contact information on the final slide here today. So be prepared to go ahead and take that down.
And what I was asking for, first of all, let's be clear, I'm not asking for you to send me all of your data from the last 10, 12, or 20, or whatever number of years. I want you to send me just a string, 3 or 4 perhaps cases of what you're collecting per kid, so that I can see what you're already doing, and I can add it to the list that I have here of the variables that are being collected from the other counties. Then, like I said, we'll look for the overlap. We'll do the classic Venn diagram. We'll see where all these circles overlap. Those will be the variables that we obviously keep. And then of the ones that are outliers that maybe only a couple of counties are using, we'll look at those and see if those look like they have some value. I think it was Sasha, your county collects let's see, what did you call them? Restorative assignments. Is that you? Okay. So you've got the different restorative assignments that the kid has had to go through. That's a great idea. Yours is the only one that I saw that collected not just restorative assignments, but collected multiple ones, because I assume that means a kid could get more than one assignment. And you had similar things like that in terms of, let's see, jury duties. So the kids might have more than one. They might have to serve as a juror on multiple jury duties. That could be very valuable. Yeah, 3. That's what I saw there. So perhaps instead of asking jury duty 1, jury duty 2, jury duty 3, maybe we try to simplify that and ask a question: how many jury duties did the kid participate in? And you can put anywhere from 0 to 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever is normal. So we can help you not just collect data that will be useful, we can help you collect it in a manner that is also analyzable. And I see Rebecca nodding. If you've ever had to deal with a data set that you didn't help create, and now you're asked to analyze it, this is like walking into the middle of a meal that somebody else has been cooking, and it's already too far gone for you to save, but you're being asked to fix it. So yes, Sasha.
I love where this is going. I love that. My goal would be to get like a statewide data set so that we could move towards like some evidence-based validation. One of the pitfalls is that we all have our individualized databases that, are already established. So then are we talking about a second layer of tracking data and just the logistics of, I use Access database, someone else might use a member tracking system, and how do we then, like, just in terms of the logistics, get to this stage? And maybe that's jumping ahead, but that's something that
I think that's not jumping ahead at all. I think it's a very fair question, and I honestly don't know how that would be answerable, except at the data level. If everybody, regardless of what system you're using, if you're collecting the data that we can all use in the right order, and you're not just collecting the data, but you're collecting it with the right labels on it. Just yesterday, I was analyzing a data set from one of my master's students, and it's amazing the number of ways people can come up with the spell female. So instead of just having a box you could check, female, male, other, whatever you'd like, they were spelling it with, they're leaving off the E, some were full capitals. The computer went nuts because it looked like there were 27 different responses when in fact there were 3. So if we can get you all collecting it with the same labels and the same order, most of the data sets that I've seen at the state level have the ability to export the data, and they have the ability to export the data into usually an Excel type file. So if you are using Access or you're using Crystal Reporting or something like that, but you can export it into a manner that is appendable, meaning we can put them all together, and we can upload it into Excel and then upload it into one of our data programs like SPSS or SAS or R or whatever it is that we're going to use. Then it's an extra step, but it puts us all on the same playing field. It puts us all on a level playing field where we're able to take the data, run it through an Excel conversion, and then run it into our data set. So I don't know how that will go down the road, but in the past, I've seen this as a addressable problem with 1 or 2 extra steps. What else did you ask?
I'm wondering if this
someone
might be a good time to do this because we've got everyone's courts are either non-operational right now or aren't doing too many cases right now as a result of the pandemic, and schools and courts and so on and so forth being operating at a much less significant level than might otherwise be. So maybe it is a good time to develop a commonality in data collection. What do you think, Sasha?
That's a good point. Yeah, I'm definitely open. And I wanted to bring forward in the chat box, Denise Pittman Rosas has said, can we get a list of what specific data is being / could be collected?
And the answer
So
is yes.
that is our
will.
goal.
Okay, so
do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, you want to say more,
Go ahead,
Rebecca?
So our goal is to get a list ultimately back to you with an idea of what the most important variables would be. The first step of that is, as Matt said, getting an idea of what are the variables you're already collecting at your individual programs. From there, once we have a chance to compare, oh, hey, everyone is collecting the age of the youth. Everyone's collecting what type of offense the youth committed. Everyone is collecting if they successfully completed the program or not. Those are the types of variables that we expect to see across most of the programs, and are things that we'll ask everyone to measure in a standardized way so that we can easily do the data analysis. So that's the long answer to yes, we do want to get that list to you, but the starting place for us is seeing what is already being collected so that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel at every single location.
And to add on to that, I could see us sending out some, because I don't know what you're all using for your data collection methods, but I could see us sending out an Excel file that already has the fields in it, already has the labels included in the fields, so that when you get a case in, you can just go right on down the list and fill it in relatively easily. And it would be less work in all likelihood than trying to put it into your file and then take it out and put it into our file. Maybe you could use this file for your file or append it, like I said. So I could see us doing that once we start getting more responses from more counties or more programs. One more thing to point out too.
That looks like
Go ahead, Sasha.
After Matt, Eduardo Quay has something.
Go ahead, Eduardo.
Eduardo, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
There you go.
If you were able to send us an Excel spreadsheet, which would be a universal document that support this exercise in the collection of data to be able to use an analysis like SPSS, where we're going to use to analyze it. It would be the most simplest form and like you said, the most swiftest form for us to be able to get a product which we're going to be able to analyze and use to get the outcomes that we want to help measure our program. It just makes sense. I've worked with a lot of different data systems that they come in, risk and vertical change and et cetera, that exports it into an Excel spreadsheet, but it never comes into the format that you might particularly need to do the analysis. You have to mess around with it to get it to that place. It's common to all the other programs that are. I mean, the simplest thing is to create a spreadsheet, whether it be Excel, toss it to us, then we populate that one. That's what we're going to use for our data collection and data evaluation.
And that's good for us to hear, because that is our goal. Like Matt said, we don't want to create more work for you or make things more difficult. We want it to be very simple and straightforward. Fill in these boxes and we'll take it from there. So it's helpful to know that that's, the system you found most usable in the past.
I believe Derek has his hand up.
I do. Just to add on, one of the things that was mentioned was the research will be used for fundraising, marketing purposes. But I would also like to see the data being used for legislative purposes as well. And I'm assuming that both will come equally important based on the research. But for example, if we have a law or somebody's ready to write a bill, if we go for a legislator or lobby before any legislator, they're going to ask us, okay, how many cases have you had? What's the outcome of the cases? So it's just not for fundraising, but down the road, possibly for legislation as well. So hopefully both of them will go hand in hand. So I just wanted to point that out.
Good point, because in all honesty, this should be part of the line item of the state budget.
Yes.
In my opinion, this should just be considered part of the budget for the courts. We've
Yes.
got community courts, we've got justice courts, we've got superior courts. California has all kinds of levels of courts. This should be just one of those levels, and it should be funded as such.
Yes. That's thank you for clarifying that, because that's my point. Thank you.
And what I was about to jump into, though, and this applies to all of you, I would imagine to some degree, but especially to Rebecca and myself, we're at the end of the semester and things are catching fire around us faster than we can put them out. So you're not going to have either of us on the scope for the next couple of weeks in all likelihood. Once we get past the end of the semester and things start to calm down, then we're going to have both the energy and the time to hit this and start getting things lined up for a good data set and good data collection. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't send us what you have. It just means that don't expect us to look at it for a couple of weeks, because I'm surprised that we can actually see Rebecca, because her desk should be piled up with papers to the point where you can't even see over the computer.
They're all behind the monitor, so you can't see them.
That's the beauty of being online with all your courses, is now they're just coming in electronic form. So any other comments or questions or curiosities, or Karen, you want to throw anything else in? This is sort of the first meeting of many, I would assume, where things will be getting moved forward in leaps and starts, but hopefully moved forward.
Well, yeah, I think it would, this is really helpful for us, to advertise that we really are wanting more of you to participate than are currently committed to do so. And then maybe the two of you talking a little bit about where this could all go. I think we've adjusted or addressed, possibilities of legislation, of funding, and where might that funding be headed. I know we had talked somewhat about starting here in California with some good results that could then be launched into something larger, maybe at a national level.
Well, I'll give you a little story of what happened when we did a program like we did a youth offender program out in Elko, Nevada, and Eastern Nevada. A lot of kids did not have anybody watching them. Both parents worked for the mines, 12-hour shifts. Dad was sleeping while mom was working, vice versa. And these kids were out getting in trouble. We got the program off the ground with some federal funding. Worked so well, the feds said, here's more money, expand it. So we expanded it to Humboldt County, Lander County, Pershing County, all these counties that were rural that had the same sort of problems of kids with nothing to do who were out getting in trouble, low-level stuff, minors in possession, shoplifting, stuff like that. They liked it so much that they said, how about expanding it into Clark County? Well, Clark County is where Rebecca is. That's Vegas. Very different from Elko. So it required some tweaking and some changing, but it worked there too. Once people start seeing this works, and they start seeing that these data are helping to guide the direction that the programs are going, then others will want to jump on board with it. I would like to get as many folks on board at the start who are believers in the importance of evidence-based practices and evidence-based programs. But if they take a while to get on board, I can understand that. They're going to want to see that we're not going to be flooding them with work and then simply ignoring what they send us, which is not our intention. And I don't expect we're going to do that, but I understand there's skepticism. People don't want to spend the efforts on something that's not going to go anywhere. So it might start off slow, it might start off fast, but I think eventually we'll get more and more folks involved because they'll want to become part of a process that is generating data that is going to change the direction and show the effectiveness of the youth court process.
I like to think that maybe we're on the same track that drug courts were 20 years ago, where, Judge Manley fought long and hard here in California to convince jurisdictions that pulling out drug offenders and putting them through some programs and holding them accountable in a different way with accolades when they did well and consequences when they didn't live up to whatever the court orders were. And what that whole process began early on to look like and what it has developed into. There were a lot of naysayers. There was a lot of reluctance on the parts of district attorneys and judges to jump onto that drug court bandwagon. And now, of course, it's just accepted because it's proven to be so successful in looking at a different way to treat drug addiction and people who show up in the courts. So I think that those of us that have been working with youth courts and know the differences that are being made just are looking for some way to just looking like pretty stories and have people see the need to provide that kind of funding. I wonder, Rebecca, if you could talk a little bit about the kinds of questions that you see yourself asking of to collect the kind of data that you would like to input into this process.
Yes, but first I saw Sasha put a question into the chat around, is there a way through this evaluation to establish that these courts are evidence-based? The difficult part with that is we have no power or control over the judges. So in a lot of these cases, it's up to a judge's discretion whether they want to refer a kid to a restorative justice or youth court program, or whether they're going to take a more traditional route. And so because we don't have control over that, we can't necessarily draw equivalencies between the kids who go through youth courts versus the kids who get a traditional juvenile justice response. The benefit is the more data that we have from these youth courts, we can still show, oh, some counties are taking kids who have these higher level offenses, and some have a bulk of kids who are experiencing truancy. And so the more data we have, the more we can show that we're seeing positive effects across all different kinds of kids across the whole state of California. And that can be impetus to have, more structured decision-making for judges. It can even be reassuring to judges that they have the confidence they need to refer more kids to those programs because they're seeing the consistently positive outcomes. So initially, it will not be an evidence-based type of setup, but this initial data collection and evaluation at the front end can help move us in that direction. And then, Matt and I have discussed, the short term and the long term of this project. So again, short term is figuring out what data is already being collected, analyzing it, and creating some type of tool so that we're getting the same data from every program that's interested in participating. That gives us the opportunity to continue evaluating long term and show that, it's not just a fluke that 2020 kids had good outcomes. They're consistently seeing low recidivism rates and high rates of success outside of the program. One of the things that we'd like to incorporate down the line is a qualitative piece, which, as I said, is us actually talking to kids who have gone through the program and getting their insights. So as you know, kids have lots of opinions, and we've heard Karen emphasize some of those positive experiences that kids have come back and said, this made such a big impact on my life. And so incorporating a qualitative component can help us to look past just, 82% of kids don't recidivate, but we can get their insights into what skills did they learn that help them avoid situations where they might have gotten charged with another offense. And so again, that's more long-term after we have a chance to look at what are those baseline numbers, but it's a good way for us to get the kids' feedback back into the programs and say, here are the pieces that are working really well, that the kids love, that they rely upon after they leave the program. And here are the pieces that maybe don't need so much attention or that the kids were disengaged with, and how your programs can work with that.
Yep, you nailed it. And time, it just takes time to develop a good data set. It's not going to be developed overnight. But once you get a few years worth of data under your belts and you can start seeing trends and you can start seeing what's working and what's working where, then you've got more information that people can use. And to tie into what was said earlier too, judges tend to be reluctant to jump on the bandwagon first. They want to see somebody else doing it, which is why the first drug court, the first DUI court, the first veterans court, the first whatever court it is we're talking about, was the difficult one. After they showed that it worked, and other judges and other court systems got with it, and they got theirs as well. I mean, we have a dozen specialty courts in Nevada now. We have specialty courts that are fascinating in that they have a focus that is so narrow. We have, I don't know if you have them down in Vegas, but we have a mentally ill court here. We have a homeless court here. We have sex worker courts here. And they're specialty courts in the sense that they know how to deal with that specific type of offender. So in time, I could see this going much the same way, that the first couple of ideas, the first couple of changes will be difficult to get people to get on board with. But once it starts showing that it's working and it fine tunes some of the problems out, then the end result of that should be more and more folks wanting to start something like this and seeing, because right now, I mean, we're all on Zoom for a reason, not just because it's convenient, but simply because we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'd like to think we're at the end of it, but the data shows that it might not be the case. We might be over the center, but not terribly far based upon what's happening in southern states. So money's tight. States are not making as much money on sales and things like that that they used to make. So if you can show this is not just effective, but it's cost effective, then you get a lot more folks on board. And that's what we hope to find over the course of the next couple of data collection cycles.
Well, my hope is that,
Chat box.
go ahead, Sasha.
There was something in the chat box about, do you have suggestions as to how to word the questions to get to the qualitative or anecdotal type questions? So it sounds like that's something
That's you,
that people
Rebecca.
are asking.
Yeah, and I also saw, Sasha, that you very generously offered up a willingness to share your more qualitative evaluation sheets. So the short answer is we want to have very open-ended questions where we're not saying, was the jury your favorite part? Was this your favorite part? But instead asking the kids very openly, what were your experiences like? What did you find the most helpful? What did you feel wasn't that helpful? Which skills have you used since leaving the program? Things like that, where they can come up with the examples from their own experience to share. Now, if other people are already collecting this kind of information where you're asking about the kids' experiences going through the program, and you want to send those forms to us, we can kind of do the same thing that we're doing with the quantitative questions and see what are the questions that everyone seems to be asking and really invested in finding out from their youth. But then, same thing, we'll develop kind of a consistent measure of these are, the 5 to 10 questions that we want to ask kids, and give us the opportunity to go ahead and see what are the shared experiences of kids who go through these programs.
Oh, is Carrie up? I don't know.
So we only have 5 minutes. I'm going to put an evaluation of this session into the chat box. Please link onto it and give us feedback about this session. I also wanted to quickly make an announcement before we wrap up that our next virtual roundtable will be our final one for the school year, and it's going to be presented by Don Carney from Marin Youth Court, and the topic's going to be trauma-informed youth court protocols. So anyone want to
What day will that be, my friend?
It is May 18th, which is the third Tuesday of the month, 3:30 to 4:30.
Amir, I have the flyer. I have the flyer on it. I think it's a draft flyer, but I can send that to you.
That would be so great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank Sasha and Jennifer, who initiated the idea of these roundtables, which I think have just turned out to be terrific. And also Derek for his help in putting together the kind of the little mini PowerPoint that we used as a guide today to familiarize you with some of the topics and verbiage that go along with evaluation. And particularly to Sasha, who does do those flyers each month and sends them out to us and keeps reminding us if we haven't registered to register. Really appreciate that effort. I wondered too, Rebecca, about getting parent input as qualitative information coming back as to, when we were doing court, we not only wanted to do an exit interview with the student who had gone through, but also with the parent, what impact or changes took place, if any, and get that kind of information, which I think was always very, very helpful in being able to either continue to send resources to that family or to let the parent know that we would be available to them even after the case had closed.
Yeah. And, that's the great thing about a long-term evaluation and us being really invested in the success of the youth courts in California is that we will have opportunities to ask those other kinds of questions that you all might be interested in. And we know anytime you're working with kids, you're working with parents, and parents are transportation, and parents are supervisors, and parents are all of these different roles in their kids' lives. And so while our initial push would be to look at the experiences of kids themselves who have gone through the program, because they're the ones experiencing all of the program elements, absolutely, parent voices are going to be critical to how can we make sure that kids are able to stay engaged in these programs.
Great. Well, I just want to encourage anyone again to participate. If you aren't sending data, don't think that you're your cases are too small or not significant enough. Every bit helps to contribute to the overall effort here and ultimate success of getting youth courts to a place where we get that approval of evidence-based practice, if you will, eventually, and certainly can demonstrate to potential funders that we are worth their time and investment.
Well, this is Judge Irvin, and I'd like to thank everyone who's participating today, especially the professors, for all that you're doing to help protect justice for youth by youth. We are at a unique point in history where we can make a huge difference in the lives of kids as we emerge from the most traumatic event that this century, I think, has to offer. But thank you so much for all you do. I'm hoping that maybe some of the experience from ELCO might be able to be taken off the shelf and maybe spread around a little bit sooner than later as the bigger project takes place. And I wanted to assure everybody that sharing is wonderful. And in the legal industry, sharing is both voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary in that briefs and cases and arguments are shared routinely amongst the various attorneys. And when they're not shared voluntarily, they're shared involuntarily. Plagiarism is alive and well in the legal community. But it's all for a good cause because getting the ideas on the table, getting them in the discussions, getting seeing through the fog and forging a road forward is what we're all trying to do. And thank you so much. That's all.
Great. And we had a couple people put in the chat box that they're willing to share their data. That's great. If anyone else wants to make it known that you specifically want to be connected in on this, that'd be great to let us know so that we can get Matt and Rebecca moving forward with you.
And if you have contacts that are in the same business but are not here today, go ahead and feel comfortable putting some pressure on them. They need to be a part of this.
Yeah, we really don't want anybody sitting on the sidelines. It doesn't help the cause, and more importantly, it doesn't help the students and the kids that we're trying to create bright futures for. So share, and share alike. Thank you again, everybody, for your participation today. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Sasha. Thank you,
Rebecca
Karen.
and Sasha and Derek.
Thank
and
you all.
the whole gang. It takes a team. So we're moving forward.
Okay, Phil, you have our email addresses. Send me the data that you have if you are willing to participate. If you have some ideas for qualitative stuff, send it to Rebecca, and we will meet again and discuss what we find.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
all
everyone.
so much.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, team. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Samir. Bye-bye.
Ed, do we have your data involved in this? Are we going to get you into this?
Just send it to Doc. I'll go, I mean, it won't be hard. I'll send it to him and then, oops, I lost you. I'll send it to him, then I'll CC you so you know what I sent to him.
Okay, great. You're kind of breaking up. Your mic's kind of breaking up.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
awesome.
Thanks, Sasha.
Bye.
Bye. So, Karen, great. So I took note that Ed wants to share information, Tanya Clenny and Denise Pittman-Rosas.
Okay.
So do you know what courts they're connected to? Because otherwise I can follow up with that information.
Okay, that would be great. I do not know what court. I know Ed's, of course, but
I think that Denise is connected to Santa Cruz.
and is that Clooney?
Tanya Clenny was another person. I think she's in the Bay Area. I'm going to look it up right now and see these names because they are familiar names. Denise,
Is it Denise Pittman?
Denise Pittman. Yeah, she is Santa Cruz Office of Ed.
Okay.
So she
So
works
she's
with
the-
Maritime Watkins. But
Uh-huh.
so follow up with Denise, because she's new to the position, but she's been very involved in these sessions and was in this one. So follow up with her. And then
Okay.
I'm trying to find where
Tanya?
Ed Quay said he would be interested. And then Tanya is Alameda, Dublin.
Oh,
And
good.
all that contact information is in that regional liaison division list, their email as well
Yes.
as their phone number. Okay.
Okay, good. I will follow up with them and
Yeah, so we got at least 3 more people committing to this conversation.
excellent, excellent. Well, I'm glad Alameda, because we've actually been trying to get in touch with Centerforce, and they just don't respond.
Yeah, so maybe Tanya can kind of help with that. Piece.
Right.
I think they had some turnover at Centerforce, it seems like.
Yes, yes, I was aware of that. And actually Donna had gotten a couple of new names, and I had sent both of them information. I didn't have phone numbers, but I had emails. So, but no response.
The other thing I would do is Sylvia was on that conversation. She didn't say, from Trinity County, she didn't say that she wanted to share data, but because she was on that session, I think it's worthwhile to follow up with her personally to rope her in. I think that they would
Okay.
have data. I think maybe she's hesitant because they don't get a lot of cases, but it's still valuable because she is active.
And it's another area, I think that's part of this is that what happens out in LA and the data that's collected, or even the kinds of offenses that they're hearing, are quite different from cow tipping that might be taking place in, a rural community.
Yeah. So who are the 3 that sent information? It was me, Dawn, and Mickey from San
Probably.
Bernardino. Yeah, I think that was the 3. So what
I
about
think
Shasta? We got to have Jennifer in there.
Yeah, there were 10 originally that had that I had talked with, that had indicated they were willing, but that's been several months ago, and before
So just add those
everybody had
names
to deal more seriously.
So just add those names
I will
in that
follow up with them and see if we can. And I don't know what kind of efforts Matthew or Rebecca have going during the summer, but hopefully we can get them data to work with at any rate.
Well, and when you reach out to them, his first request was like a spreadsheet of a sample of what data is collected.
They're interested in knowing what, so they can look at the crossovers and
de-identified, no names, no contact information, just de-identified.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think originally that was Mickey's. Well, thank you very much. It turned out fine, I think. And
yeah.
I think this may work. A Zoom call may work well once all the courts that are contributing information can actually talk with Matt and Rebecca as they move along. I think that is helpful too. So it sounds like that may be something they will want to do.
It feels clear what the next steps are. They need more of our information, then they'll know what the next steps are to synthesize that and what they need from us. So I feel like there's a clear pathway forward. We're just in that stage of bringing people on board.
Yeah, the get up and goes, and but things are getting up and going a little bit more every day. So hopefully the new normal kicks in soon. Thank you again so much for your help. I really
and I kind of just went through that PowerPoint just kind of as
it was
background,
perfect. It was perfect. It was perfect.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Bye, Karen.
Bye.